there are now 5 police forces in England investigating separate allegations of sexual abuse by Edward Heath. Those allegations are linked into the Savile paedophile ring, which I said in Spy Hunter was protected by the Cabinet Office and was supplying boys to the then Cabinet Secretary John Hunt, as well as Heath. In addition to the investigations in England, there has been a long-running investigation in Jersey. Haute de la Regaine nursing home, by the way, was the wartime headquarters of the German Abwehr, the predecessor of the DVD. I should probably pick you up respectfully in your intro, which is obviously based on media reports of what I had said. When the media said I was blaming Nazi spies for a planned attack on the London Olympics, the media weren't talking to me. No journalist came to me and asked for my version of events. None of the journalists involved, so far as I knew, had actually taken the trouble to read what I had written about the DVD. The DVD are not and never have been Nazis. They're too smart for that. Your average Nazi, Richie, is pretty dumb, or was pretty dumb. The DVD grew out of the Abwehr, who were not Nazi. The Abwehr installed the Nazis. The Abwehr tried to control them, did up until 1938, lost control, then arranged various assassination plots against Hitler. But the Abwehr were not ideological Nazis. They came up with the idea. They wrote the book, Mein Kampf. But although they came up with the idea, wrote the book, and may have designed the uniforms, they were not actual Nazis. They were too bright for that.
That's a whole other area of research that we could spend a whole show on, isn't it? But
exactly.
I want to stick with what Heath was doing, who probably knew about it, how far the cover-up went. And I want to mention this, Michael. We spoke about this earlier on today. It's very important. Our listeners are probably sick of hearing this, but I want to play a 30-second extract from a documentary made by Michael Cockrell, which was broadcast by the BBC in 1995. It's kind of staggering, really. Tim Fortescue, whom Michael will know all about because he was chief whip under Ted Heath in 1972-73, I believe. I've not got my notes to hand. I should have, but I'm pretty sure it's around about that time. Tim Fortescue, you're going to hear him here talking about people coming to the whips, politicians coming to the whips in difficulty, in trouble, with issues. And he talks about interfering with small boys. Now, have a listen to this. Michael, we'll be with you in 20 seconds. I'm not sure you'll be able to hear this, but you know what he's saying anyway. Have a listen.
Anyone with any sense who was in trouble would come to the whips and tell them the truth and say, no, I'm in a jam. Can you help? It might be debt. It might be scandal involving small boys, or any kind of scandal which a member seemed likely.
They would go to the whips, Michael. It might be a scandal involving debt. It might be a scandal involving small boys. Now, this was broadcast by the BBC in 1995. Fortescue is dead now. There's a casual nature, Michael, with which he talks about the abuse of small boys. It almost sounds, and of course Fortescue is not here to answer the questions, it almost sounds like it was a pretty regular thing for a politician, an MP, to come to him or to another whip to say, I've been caught buggering small boys, get me out of it. What do you think, Michael?
It would have been, and that's partly how we ended up with the European Communities Act. I'm not sure how many MPs were involved in abuse of underage boys and girls in the period when he was chief whip, which you were right, was 71 to 73. But that covers the European Communities Bill, which is very controversial. There was a massive amount of blackmail pressure applied to MPs. I don't know how many MPs were known to the whips as being involved in sex abuse of teenagers and in children as well. By that I mean children under the age of 14. But it was probably 20 to 30. Clearly, Tim Fortescue was covering a whole range of scandals involving MPs. They weren't all involved in abuse of boys. But it was a fair number, and that would include Labour MPs as well. Clement Attlee, the Labour leader, was involved in abuse of boys. They were supplied to him by a German intelligence-controlled boys' home in the East End of London, out of Toynbee Hall. It's something that had been going on for a very long time.
By the way, I should say this for our listeners who've not heard you and I talk before. Michael and I have one fundamental disagreement. When Michael says German intelligence, I think what he really means, and it sounds a bit patronising, I certainly don't mean to patronise him because he's obviously a very, very smart man, but I think he mistakes, when he says German, I think what he really means is Rothschild Zionists. And that's what I really believe now. We're not going to waste any time arguing about that because we've had this debate several times before, you and I. I absolutely respect your opinion, and that's why you're here. But I don't believe this German thing. I think that what we're talking about is even more sinister. But we're not, there's no point in us arguing about that again, like two bloody rams butting heads on it. We've had these disputes before. Michael, Ian and others please ask Michael Ritchie as a matter of urgency. Did Ted Heath take us into the EU on unfavourable terms because he was being blackmailed over his paedophilia?
Yes, is the short answer. I mean, he wasn't just being blackmailed, he was also on the German payroll. It's now known that he went on the German payroll in 1937. He was initially paid £250 a year in sterling, which was a lot of money for the son of a carpenter at Oxford, Belial College, Oxford, in the late 1930s. The payments increased substantially after the war, and a lot of them were laundered through Peking. Heath was running Morning Cloud, as one naval intelligence officer pointed out to me. When Heath was running Morning Cloud, the running costs of his boat, never mind the purchase costs, the running costs of the boat were more than he could have earned as leader of the opposition, which I think his salary then was £16,000, and the boat cost more than £16,000 a year to run. It had a crew, and Heath wasn't somebody who knew something about Heath's sailing ability. He pointed out to me many years ago that he wasn't actually that good a sailor. He certainly needed a crew. He couldn't have handled the yacht himself, and if he had tried to handle it himself, it would have sunk. Morning Cloud 4, in fact, did sink after Heath was booted out of office. The Germans pulled the plug on his boat and sank it for him because they were unhappy about the possibility of Britain pulling out of the EEC. That was just prior to the 75 referendum, from memory. But no, Heath was also on the German payroll and was paid substantial amounts. By the end of his life, he was worth a ridiculous amount of money compared to what he could have earned legitimately.
So Heath was abusing boys on a yacht moored in Jersey.
No. The abuse took place. Saville and an associate inside the same ring. Saville was taking boys to the yacht. Indeed, an eyewitness has now come forward to say that she saw one less boy come back from the yacht that had been taken onto the yacht, and thought it odd at the time. And I believe that person has now given a statement to police.